Good evening, everybody. It's me, Everett Tucker, with my co-host, Nick. It is the evening of May 28th, 2009, and it is 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, we are on the phone with Eric John Phelps. You may have heard him talking in the intro a little bit. He will be our very special guest tonight. Eric, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me, Everett.
No problem. Nick, you there?
I am here, everybody, and I am very excited about this show. This is the type of show, everybody, that you need to grab your pen, pencil, or paper. Eric John Phelps is a person who will give you names, book titles, video titles. You will be amazed by the information that you're going to hear tonight. So please grab your pen and paper. Eric John Phelps is going to give you names. This is not the type of radio show where we're going to just call these people the Illuminati, the Babylonian Brotherhood, the White Brotherhood, any type of name that does not specify a person's name. This is
Black
the type of show that you are going to hear names. You are going to be able to get a name and a face if you do a Google search, if you take the time and do some research. What do you think?
Oh, I would definitely agree. I definitely have my show notes ready. I prepared a little bit as far as listening to some of the interviews that Mr. Phelps had done with Nick, my co-host, in the past, and a couple others that he'd done with, or one that he'd done with Freeman, and I watched some YouTube videos with them. And I was preparing to take notes and to ask questions, but I mean, Mr. Phelps is such a wealth of knowledge that I think we are pretty much just going to let him run on topic all night. There's no way I could keep up here. So I believe Nick, in particular, we are both very interested in hearing about the SMOM, which I believe is the Sovereign Militant Order of Malta, the CNT, which is something that is starting to get a little bit of transparency lately, and more people are starting to wake up to the Council for National Policy and the Jesuit Order and John Birch Society. And from what I understand, Mr. Phelps, you have a lot of knowledge on those subjects. So I wanted to see what you could inform us about.
Okay, pleasure to be with you, Everett and Nick. And did you want to start with the Council for National Policy?
No, Eric. Actually, what I wanted to start off with is I want you to introduce yourself to some of the people who may not know you, possibly. Blog Talk Radio has the potential of having people surf and just look for a radio show just to hear a little something about what's going on in the world. And, if they're in a political frame of mind or whatnot, they could possibly just scroll through and actually listen in. And they should know who you are, Eric. Give us a little introduction about yourself, where you began in your research. I really want you to get down and deep into the John Birch Society because you were a member, and I want to know a little bit. I want everyone to know a little bit about your history with the John Birch Society and your opinion about what it is today, as far as your feelings towards it. Okay,
I started my research on this topic probably 25 years ago, and what drove me to it was essentially three things, and that was the Kennedy assassination when I was 10, and then the Lincoln assassination that I became aware of when I was in Bible college in Clark Summit in Pennsylvania, and then finally the attack on the AV 1611 King James Bible, the Reformation Bible. So those three issues drove me to the Jesuit order, and then I had to spend time in learning that history. So when I decided, I wrote a book, Vatican Assassins, and lived in the house of my friends, and in order to show that the Jesuits were the true assassins of JFK, I had to begin with their history and how they'd been so powerful, then suppressed by the Pope, then brought back to power, and ultimately then in control of what I call the Pope's Holy Roman 14th Amendment corporate fascist socialist communist American empire. So when Kennedy didn't go along with their desires, they eliminated him and then put in LBJ, and he was a perfect replacement. And one of his advisors was Edward Bennett Williams, who was probably the most powerful attorney in Washington, D.C. at the time, and tied to the Jesuits intimately of Georgetown University. So I did this study and wrote the book, and now I try to keep updated with my Jesuit Watch that's published 6 times a year. It's a little magazine or a little CD now.
That's your private publication, Eric?
Right.
Excellent.
And then
that's good, man.
So I try to keep, I make it so that the book, where the book leaves off, I try to keep people updated with names and dates and places. And then I have a couple other works. I sell the Code Word Babylon for P. Stewart. I think it's a really good book, lots of good Jesuit info on that one. And then I have the Engineer Corps of Hell that I copied. It was first published in 1883, concerning the power of the Jesuits, their maxims, their immoral theology, and their hand in the Lincoln assassination. And then I have my PowerPoint, which I feel is a very good tool to first become acquainted with as you then read the book, and that brings you all the way up through the present and how the Jesuits control Barry Davis Obama through Joe Biden, and how the policies of Obama are going to be exactly the same as George Bush in furthering the fascist agenda. So that's kind of where I'm at today.
Okay, Eric, let's touch upon your membership in the John Birch Society and talk a little bit about that to inform those who want to be a part of this so-called patriot movement, which is now what a lot of us are calling the Bale movement. Let's talk about the whole process and how the JBS was originated, who funded it, who started it, and your membership, and what you think about it today.
Okay, the John Birch Society is essentially a fascist organization run by the Knights of Malta. Much of what it has said in the past is very true, and the authors like Robert Welch, Gary Allen, Alan Stang, a lot of what they said was very true. However, it brings you into ultimately fascism, and they want to blame the Rothschilds. They want to blame the Jews. And Gary Allen's work, none dare call it conspiracy. He favorably quotes Pedro Rupe, who at the time was the Jesuit general. And when Pedro Rupe describes this international world conspiracy, he is actually describing the Jesuits verbatim. So the John Birch Society was from the very get-go, from the very beginning, controlled by the Jesuits for the purpose of bringing fascism to power here in the U.S. And to do that, they had to have the same men who founded the John Birch Society and really controlled it had to set out and establish communism as the backdrop for the end game being fascism. So I was a member of the John Birch Society when I was much younger. I attended their meetings. I attended a meeting with Alan Stang and Gary Allen, very eloquent speakers. I think Alan Stang is deceased now. Alan Stang still lives, but I think Gary Allen is deceased. Robert Welch, he was a brilliant man, but he was a 32nd degree Freemason, and on his deathbed he was baptized into the Roman Catholic Church for a job well. Just like Constantine, just like Thaddeus Stevens, the real pusher of the 14th Amendment. So the John Birch Society, I had an acquaintance who was Stuart Crane. Stuart Crane was a coordinator for John Birch Society for 7 years until he discovered that Robert Welch was a high-level Freemason, then he resigned. Stuart Crane was a professor at Bob Jones University, a very well-spoken man. He has a series out, a 12 cassette series, which is very interesting, very well done. But Crane, again, blames the Jews. So the John Birch Society, that's the direction they always go to. And the John Birch Society was founded on the name of John Birch. Now, this is very interesting. John Birch was a Baptist missionary to China, and he was a very brilliant Southern gentleman, and he spoke Chinese fluently, and he was recruited into the American military to help the Americans during their campaign into China to drive out the Japanese. And after the Japanese had surrendered, Captain John Birch he worked for he was a Protestant man. He was he was head of the Flying Tigers. remember his name. Very brilliant man, very wonderful man. Anyway, he headed up the Flying Tigers, and John Birch worked for him. And John Birch was loaned to William Donovan. And William Donovan, Wild Bill Donovan, was, of course, an Irish Catholic and a member of the Knights of Malta. He was the founder, the first head of the OSS, and was also one of the heads of the CIA, one of the first heads. And so Wild Bill Donovan betrayed John Birch into the hands of Mao Zedong, and they viciously murdered him, shot him in the back of the head. And that was the end of John Birch, so that the Jesuits then, when they come along to create the JBS, they're going to name it after a murdered Baptist so as to unite Catholics and Protestants and Baptists together into this right-wing movement. And this is exactly the same thing that the Council of National Policy does, to unite the Protestants and Baptists and Catholics, primarily white. I call this the white right-wing fascist movement, so that they will drive us there into the ultimate game of fascism. And the Council of National Policy is very much heading this now.
When you mention, how a person who was assassinated and how a name was utilized to then kind of glorify the assassination that they committed, it sounds very similar to Captain William Morgan, the Freemason who exposed the rituals and the initiations of Freemasonry. And now you have a rum named after Captain Morgan who is wearing a pirate outfit, which to me is a representation of the Knights Templar. And you've got Captain Morgan being glorified as being assassinated, and people are drinking him up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. They will carry out their assassinations and then get a lot of mileage out of it, making a martyr out of him. They did the same thing to Kennedy. They did the same thing to Martin Luther King. They carried out the assassination, but then turned around and glorified him so the masses would be further confused. So yes, this is their agenda. It's the Council for National Policy.
That was Council for Mojo and or MO, and Eric, you were about to lead into the Council for National Policy, where there's a right wing. I don't really believe in the right and left paradigm per se, but a lot of people do in the world. And there's Christian Zionists involved. There's Knights of Malta. There's JBS members. Blackwater's involved. Can you start naming some names and talk a little bit about the history of the Council for National Policy?
Real quick, Mr. Phelps, I wanted to ask a question in regards to Sun Myung Moon and the Council for National Policy. If you could get into that, because I know my mom, I was telling her about the Moonies, and she just did not believe that Sun Myung Moon had funded the CNP. So I wanted to see what you could tell us about that.
Oh, he absolutely has, and he also gave Jerry Falwell $1 million.
Yes, he did. He bailed him out because he was bankrupt.
So, and Falwell was also CNP. But let's review some names here. I think you guys will really enjoy this. Remembering now that the membership list is secret. It's strictly confidential, and you can't get it.
Yes.
So those are the boys that are really the dangerous ones. I mean, the CFR is bad, but these guys are the real ones we're after.
Yes.
Okay, in the past, we have men like John Ankerberg. John Ankerberg was a Bible defender and debated Masons, and really appeared to be some sort of a decent fellow in defending biblical truth. But he's Council of National Policy. John Ashbrook. John Ashbrook was part of the World Anti-Communist League, and that ties him to J. Peter Grace, to the Knights of Malta there.
Correct.
The deceased J. Peter Grace. By the way, the J. Peter Grace was the godfather of Pat Robertson's children.
Wow.
That's right. So, and Jeremiah Denton is another Knight of Malta that was intimately involved with Pat Robertson's 700 Club. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you got Pat Robertson in the Council of National Policy. William Ball, he's supposed to be a great constitutional attorney. He's in it. Gary Bauer. Tim LaHaye, he's the founder of the Council of National Policy and the promoter of what I call, and many others call, the Jesuit rapture theory.
Oh, yes.